Sunday, the 30th of October. Welcome to this service. Today, I would like to share with you some thoughts on the word discernment. Now, discernment is not a word that we use in our everyday vocabulary, and sometimes a word that we never ever think about. So what is discernment? Two stories from the Bible. The one, Genesis chapter 2, verse 4 to 9, and that's the story about God planting a garden, a beautiful garden, and he says there are beautiful trees, wonderful trees that produce good, but in the middle there are two trees. A garden, there's a tree that gives life and the tree that gives knowledge of what is good and what is bad. And then another story about someone in John chapter 2, someone who comes to Jesus in the middle of the night and says, "Rabbi, we know that you are a man sent from God." So discernment. Perhaps a story can help us to understand the idea of discernment. And it's a story about a granddad and a grandson, well-known story of the two sat together, and the old man said, "You know, my son, in my life there are two wolves. The one is bad. The one is anger and sorrow and regret, arrogance and self-pity, resentment and inferiority, false pride and superiority and ego." "And what is the other wolf?" the young boy asked. He said, "Oh, the other wolf is joy and peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness and benevolence, empathy, truth, compassion, and faith." And they fight. And the young boy reflected on this and then asked his granddad, "Which of these two wolves win?" And the old man said, "The one you feed, my son." So the question is, what do we feed in our lives? And that is discernment. That is to decide what is the right thing. What are the thoughts that I foster within my life? The word discernment is not something that I grew up with, unfortunately. And many times in my own life, I thought that I had a real lack of discernment, sometimes making wrong decisions, and by the grace of God, sometimes making really good decisions. But the way it came into theology is in a very big way the story of St. Ignatius of Loyola, who, when he was a young man, was injured, and he started reading books which made him, at the end, write down his so-called spiritual exercises, which is all about helping people to discern in life. But we live with discernment. We make it every day. We make choices. We make big decisions. Think about a professional golfer who uses a caddy to help him discern what club he would use, or a young person who have to decide of what they're going to do later in life. How will we spend our retirement? We have to make these decisions all the time. And apart from that, manage our own emotions and our own feelings and our own thoughts. And that, dear friends, is where discernment comes in. In the story of Genesis, we realize that God gave this as part of reality. Not so much as a story about sin, but as the reality of life, of making choices. No one escapes this. Every single one of us have to live with it. The problem is that we neglect it, and very often, by not realizing it, feeding the wrong wolf. The story of Nicodemus is just as beautiful, because he realized something. He came to Jesus at night, trying to figure out what is truth, what is reality. As a church, we here in Logie are in a process of discernment. What is God's way forward for us? The problem with our lives these days is exactly that our lives are predicted by an entertainment culture, by being pressed for time, always being busy. We don't make time for this. And perhaps today, and this thing that came into my life again made me realize, but stop and make time to listen, to reflect, to pray, to wait upon God, to find His will. We don't have to live with fear, but it doesn't take away the responsibility to be aware of which wolf I'm feeding in my life. So I invite you, perhaps you can reflect on your own life and say, what am I doing? Where am I going? And what is your way for me, Lord? Two final thoughts. The one is we need solitude and silence for that, but we also need friendship and community, because it's a process where others are involved as well. And may your life, my life, not just be a mere fight between these two wolves, but a time to reflect on which is the best and to focus on that. May God bless you. Amen.